everybody. So I am Rebecca. I am your professor for this interpersonal processes course. I want to welcome you to week one, and we're going to go through a little bit what week one entails so that you know what to expect for the coming days, and also go over the content for the Beth Burwell rating that was assigned for this week. Um, just for a little bit of background, I am the Director of Disability Services here at Widener. I also graduated from our MSW program in Chester, and so I am very familiar with this class, both as a student and now as a professor, which is fantastic for me. I have had the experience of working with students here for 4 years or so, and before that I had a lot of experience working with adults with autism and intellectual disabilities in the community. We worked with employers mostly, but we also worked with volunteer sites and just to get people integrated to the community that were previously segregated into workshops. So that's basically my background. I have done some time with family services, working with foster families as well as biological families for reunification. And I have also worked as a clinician with adults with intellectual disabilities who have aggressive behaviors on how to work with those behaviors and get those needs met. As that is relevant to our topic for this week, I'm going to hold on to that. We'll talk about getting people's needs met in a little bit. But first, I wanted to go through this week so that you knew what to expect and what I was expecting of you as students, and also to go over a little bit of um, the different types of assignments we have going on. Like I said in the previous video, there's a lot of moving parts in this course. There are certainly times in which you have to do multiple, very different types of pieces for 1 week, and it certainly is a very intense beginning to the social work program. Every course will not be like this. Every course will also not be as, uh, for lack of a better word, internal. It's very introspective and calls on you to make yourself very vulnerable, and that's not something you see very frequently after this course. I get that question a lot, and I just want to make sure you guys know going in that that isn't something that is so prevalent through the whole program. That being said, this week we're going to start with groups and the theories around groups. And so I'm going to go over what we're going to do this week and then go over into the content. There we go. All right, so we're in week one over here, and I just want to make sure you know where to access your required readings for this week and each week. If you go into the week on this column here, you'll find your objectives, and this is the required reading for this week. I have it open over here. There's also a couple required videos. The bottom two videos are really to help you get acclimated to either Widener's online accounts and interacting with folks via email, or with creating videos, which you'll be asked to do this week if you haven't done so already. I've said in the previous email that this is probably one of the most important readings of the semester. I'm going to double down on that. This is probably the most important article of the semester. It's not frequently that I say you should know this article in and out, but you should know this article in and out. For the rest of the semester, there's probably only one other, I guess, body of work that I would say similar things about, and I'll note that when we get there. But this is one that you're going to use in every paper, in every process note, and I guarantee you it's one you'll pull from for years to come, because when I've been working with colleagues or with students or with interdisciplinary teams, treatment teams, it's something that always resurfaces with me to better understand the dynamics of what's going on around me. So that's why I want to make sure that you have really mastered this content, and most of what we cover today in like the content section of this video is going to be around this article. not to put Daniel Goleman's video in the back burner or anything. It's certainly a great talk and it's very accessible, something that everybody can understand. I think it's originally towards a bunch of tech professionals, so certainly not people who are originally in the social services type of fields. So it makes it a little bit more digestible, and I like it for that reason. Those are required readings. As you go back, you will see um, that you have 2 discussion posts. You have an icebreaker in which I want you to make a video that introduces yourself. I want you to cover um, who you are, where you're coming from, and also what brought you here. These bullets can be found down here. You want to talk about why social work and why now, and I would love to hear why online, because I think that's definitely an integral part of the dynamics here in our community, is that everyone comes from a different place, and this type of venue is something that works for people for a myriad of reasons. So I'd love to hear your reasons. I'd love to hear how you feel about social work as a whole. And then you also want to respond to one of your colleagues. So you want to talk about common grounds you guys share, and also how you might kind of work together or have overlap in between both of your perspectives. You want to talk about joining. That is everybody's icebreaker. Who's already done it. Okay, so there's a couple ways to record these. I am currently using Screencast-O-Matic, which is what this tutorial is about. You also have the option of doing Zoom, so I opened into my Zoom so that I could show you how to do that. Screencast-O-Matic, since I'm on it, if I open recorder, it's going to open the recording I'm in. I'm logged in here too. It's free. Both of these are free actually. You just press start recorder. It's pretty intuitive. It certainly is something I can walk you through. We can even go on Zoom and walk you through Screencast-O-Matic if you want to. But right now on Screencast-O-Matic, I'm going to walk you through Zoom. So if you're going to go through a meeting, let's say host a meeting, video on. I wonder if you guys are going to get feedback. I didn't think about that. Okay, so you open Zoom meetings. There's me. And you join audio by computer. Fair. It is right. I am already using it. So it can't use my, oh no, it has it. You can see how it flashes up over here. So it has me recording both the dialogue through here and dialogue through there. You can see up here I'm getting an error message that I can't use the actual video components because there's something else using it, which is true. Screencast-O-Matic is. But what you can do is press record down here, which I'm not going to do because I'm already recording through Screencast-O-Matic. Turn your video feed on. It's really important that we get to know each other face to face. Sometimes that just helps for people with different types of learning styles. So if you are somebody who learns more visually, it really is beneficial to see face to face. So that is basically how you do that. I'm going to close out of here. Actually, before I leave, so you can always invite colleagues into there, and so you can send them an email. Use this one because you should probably use your Widener email. If you use Gmail, that's fine, but yeah. Or you can copy the URL, which is typically what I do, and then I just forward it to everybody. And then you have a central place, and if they click on it, they come to the same meeting. I do a lot of meetings through Zoom now for students who are coming from far away or remotely using online services. So definitely it's a good service to use. You guys are probably not going to be all in the same location to meet face to face, and this is probably a good alternative to that. All right, so I'm going to close out of here. End meeting from me. My dogs are growling, in case you heard that noise. I'm going to let them work that out because I don't feel like redirecting them while you guys are listening to me. So that's the icebreaker. You're going to make a video either with Screencast-O-Matic. Sorry, I couldn't let it go. With either Screencast-O-Matic or Zoom. And then after that, you just post it onto YouTube and use the URL there. If you have a paid service through Screencast-O-Matic or through Zoom, you can also, they'll give you the ability to post through their publishers, but YouTube is the way most students go because it's free. Okay, so that is the icebreaker. You also have a class agreements discussion forum right here. And here I want you to put in, and a lot of students have already done this, which is fantastic. I want you to put forth what you feel like is a reasonable expectation to have for your colleagues. Something like I saw respect pretty much throughout all of the uh, submissions, which I think is a great idea. I also know that being open-minded and being somebody who is going to be a safe space provider is important to a lot of folks. So what you're really going to want to put is what's important to you. And if you're having a hard time thinking of what might be important to you, maybe ask yourself what your biggest fears going into this type of community is, and talk about what safety policy would alleviate that fear. So if you're afraid of being harassed, or if you're afraid of being marginalized, maybe talk about making sure everybody's voice is heard, making sure that people's perspectives are validated, and understanding that diversity is an important factor to everybody's experience. So that is the class agreements. You don't have to respond to anybody's for this forum. You're typically only going to have one forum each week. So this is just one that we can create a body of work together that will help us move forward. Okay, so there's process notes and there's a dyad exercise. We're 11 minutes into this, 12 minutes into this video, and I want to make sure that you know to do this availability poll, because this is the most important thing that you do immediately, because I have to make sure that I pair you guys up with somebody who's going to make sense for your time and your time zone and your lifestyle by Wednesday. And so I want to make sure that I have enough time to really make sure you all are suitably matched with at least your dyad partner. And then immediately after that, I'm going to work on getting you in small groups. So worry about one thing at a time. I know I just said small groups, but that's like future you guys' problem. You just want to do the availability poll for now. I can't take it, so I can't show you through it, but you would see everyone's responses. And then you have your process note and your dyad exercise. You're going to want to do your dyad exercise as soon as possible, because the resulting conversation is going to be something you talk extensively about in your process note. So for your dyad exercise, just so you know, you're going to be meeting with your one partner. You can certainly use Zoom, which is that web meeting software we just went over. You can use Skype or FaceTime. I've had students actually meet in person if they're really close by. There are a lot of folks near Widener campus. I've had folks do a phone call if nothing else works, but I would rather you video conference if at all possible. So the goal of this week for your dyad conversation is really just to make sure you have a system that works. Find a time of the week that works and find the modality in which you guys are going to communicate. So if you have the decision to go through Zoom or through Skype, just make sure you kind of worked out the kinks this first time around, because you don't have a really extensive exercise to go through. You don't have any role plays or anything like that. So it's a good time to hit barriers and overcome them. I do want you to discuss with each other how you ended up in the social work program, and what brought you in your life to working with other people. Also, what you plan on doing once you leave here, if you have goals or long-term achievement possibilities in mind, what does that entail? Should be a pretty easy dyad experience. Probably not longer than a 10-minute conversation, but you guys can hit it off and talk for an hour. I've certainly had students do that too, so it's totally up to you guys. And finally, this Sunday, you'll have a process note due. This process note is going to be 3 to 4 pages long. There's a lot of limitations on here. And just so you know, I don't have control over a lot of the verbiage that's on here. If you have any concerns about meeting maximum page limits, just email me and talk through it. But you should definitely be able to hit the minimum. It's usually much more challenging to keep it within the maximum because there's so much going on and the questions we ask are typically pretty deep. So a lot of students struggle to keep it within that frame. And I just want to make sure that you stay on point and that the words you're giving us are efficient, right? So you want to make sure that everything you say is really well posed, concise, but still you could be as concise as humanly possible and not really cover the material you want to cover in 3 to 4 pages sometimes. You're going to want to talk about 3 things. The first thing is going to be your dyad conversation. That's going to be the bulk of that paper because it's a whole double page space. A whole page double spaced. It's the end of my day. It's also the first day of classes. So you want to talk about kind of a brief summary of what happened with your dyad partner, what technology you decided to use, when you met, but also it says in all of these process note prompts how you reacted inwardly and outwardly. And what that means is how did you feel about what was going on? Did you get, sorry, my dogs are fighting. Did you get any did you get any red flags that came up when you guys were discussing things? Did you have issues as far as coming to a common ground? Did you hear anything that made you nervous? Did you hear anything that got you excited? What was your internal dialogue going through? What were your fears? What were your things to look forward to? And then also, how do you think you presented? Do you feel like you presented in a way that was confident, or did you self-deprecate, or did you, really think about your behavior and their behavior and how you reacted? And then afterwards, I want you to step back and think about how that interaction impacted you as a whole. So did it make you feel more comfortable in the class? Did it make you kind of dread the class? Which is completely fine. Please be honest. I much prefer honesty than anything else. Yes. So go over what you feel like it really did for you and your outlook. You also have a large group process, which is the icebreaker videos. So I want you to go over how you felt watching those icebreaker videos, making yours, and did you feel like the responses you got were something that made you feel more comfortable here? Did you feel like the process of responding to other folks made you feel more connected, or did you feel like it was faked? Totally fine to be honest again. You just want to be self-aware is really the important. It's not necessarily about making sure you say the right things. It's making sure that you're thinking honestly. And then you're also going to go over the reading reflection. You're going to go over the piece that we're about to cover in the content portion of this video. For that reason, you're going to want to talk about the main points, but on top of it, and I'm going to say this probably for the 3rd time already, it's really important that you're able to talk about the material in a way that matters to you. So I want to make sure you can rephrase the content, that you feel like it relates to certain aspects of your work or your life. A lot of the material we cover here is not going to be something that only relates to certain people. It's all very much about just working with humans. So unless you live in a bubble and don't talk to anybody, it's going to relate to you somehow. And none of you do because you're all talking to me right now. So definitely go through the reading. That should be about, I think it says half a page. 1 page. So same amount as your dyad partnership. And then that's your process note. If you're using any citations, you should be using APA style citations, and you should have a title page and a header going throughout. That's my dog, everybody. Hi, Ellie. Oh, gosh. I'm going to pause this and deal with this. I will be right back. About that, folks. All right, so I am just going to go over the content from today. We are going to review the parole reading and make sure you feel comfortable with that content because it is really relevant for the rest of the semester. So I have the chapter up here. This is the reading that I am extremely passionate about. Beth Burrell, who wrote this book as well as chapter, she actually is one of the administrative staff here at Widener now. When I was in school, she was actually my interpersonal processes professor. So I take a lot of this to heart, and so I'm gonna go over it with you as well as some additional content that I think is helpful as far as and getting through the group stages and making sure that you get the most out of diverse thoughts and diverse experiences. So, um, this is the chapter as a whole. Um, Definitely read through it. As I said, some of the ideas that I wanted to cover though is certainly this section around being seen, heard, and known. And so just to speak about that a little bit, I'm actually going to make this a little bit bigger just because you guys got to read that on your own time. Um, so I want you to think about a time in which you were in a group, specifically when you were first starting. So if you lived residentially in your undergrad experience, I think a good example would be your dorm your first year. And if you had multiple roommates, that's also another good scenario. Think about what it was like to be in a group that was entirely new. And I think anytime that you're in that situation, even if it's a classroom, like right now, but I think it's better to think of a past experience when you're starting at a job, per se, your department group, what feelings you have around groups. Do you feel inadequate? Do you have imposter syndrome feelings? What do you think really resonates with you, and how does that impact your experience inside that group? So people want to be seen, heard, and known. And what they mean about that is that you want to make sure that your presence is not only visible to your group mates and that people either consider you or um, acknowledge your input. You want to make sure that your presence there is something that is noteworthy. Nobody wants to be insignificant. And I think a lot of us are afraid of feeling insignificant, not just in groups, but in a lot of settings. So you're looking at a group of people in a new group who all feel like they don't want to be insignificant. And how is that going to impact the interactions that you see? Um, People also want to be able to know that what they're saying is being listened to. And a huge trend is that you hear um, with the intent to respond. So people continuously wait for their moment to contribute, and in doing so are not hearing the things that other folks are saying. So you're going to want to work to be present for other people and understanding yourself when you don't have that need met, so that you have the tools or at least the words to express that need, to try and progress the group. And being known is something that's really challenging. I'm not sure how many folks feel that they are completely known by anybody besides those that are most intimate to them. But if you're in an extremely well progressed group, you should all feel known. It doesn't do well to have groups where only certain people feel heard and known, because then typically, if one person's isolated or if one person's on the outliers and on the periphery and aren't able to contribute or be part of the group, then typically the rest of the group has a false sense of intimacy because they are bonding with each other against somebody, not bonding with each other because of everybody's authentic selves, which includes the negative and includes the positive. So that's why I really like the freshman dorm analogy of that group, because you're living with each other. So chances are you have to progress at a certain point. If you've worked with somebody extensively, again, you have to progress to a certain point in order to really keep things stable. After a while, you're going to need to have everybody feel seen, heard, and known in order for the group to be peaceful and also productive. You can be a peaceful group and not be productive and not hit all those specific areas, but if you want to be both of those things, stable, peaceful and productive, you do need every member to feel like a contributing, authentic, known, and accepted person of the group. So, what I want us to talk about is how the lack of that need not getting met, might impact a group's dynamic. And so, you know only very keenly how you feel in any situation. So, you're going to be charged throughout the semester not only to just think about yourself, because I know a lot of people who don't realize that they have those feelings until they see behaviors and they realize that that behavior is trying to get that need met. And that's definitely something that's going to happen this semester with some of you guys going through your process notes and your papers. And um, I also want you to consider how those feelings of not being seen, heard, or known impacts those you're working with and might delay your group's development. All right, so typically when you're not getting a need met, you feel some kind of fear, insecurity, or anxiety. And this paper will go through, Beth Burrell's chapter will go through a couple defense mechanisms that you will see as a result of that. But I wanted to pull up, and I'm going to make my screen a little bit smaller again. Doo-doo-doo. I wanted to pull up this because I really like this breakdown of different defense mechanisms. And I want to preface this with the idea that none of this should be used as a weapon. And what I mean by this is you're going to go through this class and you're going to see things in your partner or your children or your parents, all the relationships that are the closest to you, and you're going to say, that is X, Y, and Z, and this is what's happening here. And you're going to start to really see a lot of these in play, which is great. But what you do with that is important. And I think sometimes the first reaction is to go to that person and say, I learned about this in class and you're X, Y, or Zing. Probably not. But okay, so for instance, we're going through all of these defense mechanisms, right? And projection and introjection are definitely the two most prominent defense mechanisms in groups. If you feel like somebody doesn't like you, and so they assume that you don't like them, and you guys get in conflict because they're assuming everything you're saying is going to be against them, that's projection. The weaponization of that idea or that knowledge that you now have is if you see somebody doing something and maybe making an assumption and you guys are resulting in a conflict and you see that it's projection. Like you assume X, Y, and Z, so you assume, so you're seeing things that aren't there. If you say those words, you're probably going to exacerbate conflict. What you want to do is think about why that person is using a defense mechanism. See out frequently in this group project and in this course is actually the displacement and also the I'm not going to say acting out because I don't want people to feel targeted, and I certainly don't want somebody using that verbiage going forward with a colleague, but you will see people who have a really volatile reaction, and so in order to separate themselves, they might do a little bit more of an expressive of an emotion. I'm trying to be as politically correct as possible. Another thing that you might see pretty frequently is the passive aggressive reaction, and that is certainly something that is learned over time. A lot of folks have developed passive aggressive coping strategies um, as a result of maybe having an addict in the family or having to control their environment with non-violent and non-confrontational means. I know a lot of people who have lived in families in which that's really the main forms of communication is this passive aggressive uh, idea of um, trying to like mind read each other. Oh, they want me to do X, Y, and Z, or oh, I want them to know I would want X, Y, and Z, but I can't specifically ask for that need to be met. So it's problematic in and of its own idea. So these are all different defense mechanisms you might see. I think it's important to consider that all of these come from a place of an unmet need. So instead of using these defense mechanisms as a way of rationalizing, which is um, another defense mechanism, like if you're rationalizing, oh, they're just doing this because they're X, Y, because uh, they're just regressing into a temper tantrum because they're having a defense mechanism, but you're avoiding the problem at hand, which is somebody's needs not getting met. And you have to have a vested interest in everybody feeling like a collaborative member of the team. So that is what I want you to take away from this. I definitely think looking up defense mechanisms, spending some time with a chart like this. I'll put this chart up on our shared files. Shared files is a Canvas Cruiser term. I'll put it up for this week so that you guys have access to it. And just kind of peruse it over, especially to better understand our reactions as humans and what can be um, something that we might not understand fully in the moment, but separating it, you realize that it's just our natural response to a stimuli. All right, so that's defense mechanisms. I want to go through real quick, and I'm going to make this bigger again because we don't need all of that. So I want to go through real quick the stages of a group. And I think this is probably the most essential part of this reading as far as how it relates to what we're doing. You're going to be put into a small group. You're going to have a dyad, which is just a partner that you can kind of go through these non-violent, easy exercises with, but there's not really, an outcome. You don't have to, develop something or produce something that is graded. It's really just about the experience of communicating with another human being. So it's not as high stakes as other interactions are. However, this small group is likely going to challenge your ideas of group development, and it's going to be something you use with this lens. You're going to look at your group's development, the interactions you have with your colleagues in this small group through the lens of a group development theory. Start in pseudo community. In pseudo community, you're going to see some certain tasks at play. You're going to see folks trying to test out their boundaries, figure out where they're comfortable. They might try and just see if anything is reacted to with hostility. There's a lot of just kind of feeling out the waters, knowing who's going to figure out who's going to be, what kind of role. Is there going to be a mediator? Is there somebody who's really taking charge? Is there an organizer? It's really just about kind of observing, and people typically don't feel safe in this role. So what you have is a team of people who likely all don't feel very safe. So you're seeing a lot of anxiety. You're certainly going to see some defense mechanisms at that point. But your goal for this particular stage should be to establish safety. You want to make sure that everybody knows that they can come to the floor with something to say, and in the very least, they won't be shut down. So when you consider your interactions with your group, you're going to want to think, all right, so that person reacted judgmentally. How is that going to impact me in the future? And also, that person said something that I reacted to. How is that going to impact that person in the future? The goal here isn't to control other people. It's to make sure you're not stopping other people from being authentic. Because if nobody in the group is authentic, wait, no, back up. If there's one person in the group who's not authentic, nobody is. You either accept everybody or it's not a community. It's just pieces. So your first goal in pseudo community is going to be to establish safety. Once people start to develop a secure feeling in the group, they might start testing the boundaries, specifically the groups. They might start feeling comfortable enough to assert themselves in the chaos stage. Every semester, students are terrified of this chaos stage. Every semester. And every semester I say chaos stage is a good stage. Go to chaos stage. I try to push things in a chaos stage as non-violently as humanly possible because I'm like the most passive human being in the world. But it's really important to enter the chaos stage and to start kind of advocating for yourself so that you can begin to feel heard. So in that stage of chaos, you're going to see people confronting each other. There's certainly going to be some areas of conflict, and there's certainly going to be some areas of testing and challenging. So what you're going to want to do is address it. Every time there's a conflict, in order to progress through the chaos phase, you have to meet at least some amount of resolve. If you avoid it, if you back up, the most challenging thing is to stop things from going from chaos back to pseudo community, because people are going to tend to go back to what was safe and say, okay, let's just keep acting polite again and stop talking to each other. We'll just do the bare minimum. And you'll see that, you probably see that in groups all the time, right? You guys get to a place where you're starting to be confronting and people feel charged, and people go back to just only giving the bare minimum to that group and doing what absolutely has to be done, but not interacting otherwise. The downside to that is you're not really hitting that place where you can really get that sweet spot of collaboration. You're not getting the best out of your minority members. You're not getting the best out of the diverse voices that you bring to the table. You are not getting the best of everybody there because somebody is marginalized. Somebody doesn't feel heard. Somebody doesn't feel safe. So you have to make sure everybody feels accepted and authentic and respected. And in order to do that, you have to go through chaos. If you haven't gone through chaos, you haven't gone to the next step. Even if chaos is just one person saying, I really don't think that's right. I think we should do something else. That can still be chaos. If your reaction is extremely peaceful, hey, that's a great chaos. That sounds awesome. But there's always that first person who contradicts somebody else, and the whole group has to observe how that plays out. So the first time somebody says, no, I think you're wrong, how you react as the person who's being confronted, how the person who's confronting you reacts, and how the other group members react really dictate how well you progress through chaos. What you want to do is get to the emptying and resolution stage, which is the next stage of development. That stage is going to be a lot about understanding difference, finding safety within difference, and being very honest and vulnerable. You're going to hear me use the word vulnerable pretty frequently throughout the course because that is the key to getting to the place, that sweet spot of community. So if you don't feel safe, if you feel anxiety, if you feel insecure, it's going to be extremely challenging for you to allow yourself to be vulnerable. In order for you to really tell folks, hey, I need this, I have this need, I need your help, and to be very honest and open and possibly open yourself up for rejection is really challenging. So if you can do that and feel like you're going to be understood, and people in your group are responding to it positively, you're going to be going through the emptying stage. So if you get through that place where, like in your first year dorm, if you end up getting to that place where people are fighting and you have to be mediated or you have to kind of resolve differences, and somebody starts crying or somebody just breaks down or somebody has an absolute breakdown of emotion, um, that's your emptying stage. Emptying stage is probably the more challenging of the stages because, again, it's very easy to go from conflict back to pseudo community, but to go from conflict back to or conflict onto emptying is challenging because you have to put yourself out there, and that's usually the biggest barrier. Once you put yourself out there, okay, so first of all, sorry, the emptying and resolution stage is going to be where you see folks being seen, heard, and known. So when we cycle back to our needs getting met, that's going to be where you talk about your needs. Seen, heard, and known is your most basic of needs, and if you need to use those words within your group, I would definitely advise you to do that. After that, you hit the community stage. Community stage is where you produce things, everybody's voice is heard. You contribute or you get contributions from every group member, and you understand and appreciate the strengths everybody brings. So, for instance, I had a team once who had a team member who tended to be very advice driven. So she had a tendency to try, she was definitely somebody who preached a good deal, And she tended to get under people's skin because she gave them advice when it wasn't asked. And so the whole semester, that whole group was constantly at odds. And they were all bonding against that particular student, or they were all coming to me offended by the advice that was given, until eventually we were able to all get together and talk about what is the need that's not getting met here. And so that student who gives advice talked about what in their personality creates that kind of pattern, right? So she feels helpless. And so her ability to contribute to a group is important to her. And she wants to feel significant. So she's going to give advice in a way to try and fix things, because she's a fixer, as many social workers tend to have that drive to be a fixer. It's not like we go into this profession to make things worse. So she tended to be a fixer, and if she didn't feel like her contributions were being heard, or that she was playing an integral part of the group, that was the way she played an integral part of the group. So the group was able to really understand what need was being met by that behavior, and understand that when it happened, that student was just trying to meet that need. Also, they were able to really bring that student into the fold when it came to making decisions or contributing, because they knew that student had ideas to provide but didn't give them unless it was pitched in a very specific way. So they were able to move through and they get into community. I would definitely say that many groups don't get into community within the 7-week course. It's very challenging to do. Honestly, when I did it, it was a 12-week course and we only ended up in conflict. So take from that what you can. So you really just want to be aware. The whole point is observation. It's certainly not an outcome-driven project, this group project. I don't need you guys to reach community stage. What I need you to do is observe it honestly, take the different components of what we're studying here and look at it with a clear and intellectual lens. Learn to separate yourself from the situation and really be able to relate the material in a way that is clinical. So that's the bulk of it. That is all of the development stages that we cover in this course. There's also typically a termination phase in some of the theories. We can go over that at the end of the session, because I want to make sure you guys focus on group development for now. Termination is really important when it comes to having therapeutic relationships with your clients. So it's important to cover, but I want to make sure for now we're talking about working in groups and how we interact with each other and how we progress. So that is a lot of information. And I know I talk very fast. If at all you want to talk through anything, if you have a question, feel free to ask me in the Ask the Instructor forum here in our Engage course, or ask me if we can have a FaceTime or a Skype call or a Zoom meeting, whatever you want to do, and we'll set it up. I want to make sure you guys feel like you are able to get feedback as much as you can and go through the course with security, knowing that you're doing the things that are expected of you. So if you feel like you just want to run things through, that's completely fine. I understand that being on an online forum might not lend itself very well to that back and forth dialogue with your professor, and I want to make sure we can artificially create it where we can. All right, so that's it for the week 1 session. I will do a video like this every Monday that covers what's due that week, what's expected that week, and also some of the content that's covered. If you have any questions, you can always reach out to me. We can do a more intensive review of what the progress note expectations are if you need it. That should be it for me. I hope you have a great night. Sorry my dogs are feeling kind of the worst. I wonder if I can get them over here. Harper, come here. Harper, come. Come here. No. Come on. Oh, Ellie came over and said, hi, Ellie. There's my dogs. Oh, no, she's done. She wants me to be done. She's like, no. Okay. Bye, guys.